Out into the open goes Feaunati.
Here we go, Sarah Byrne.
And Amy Cokayne will come round the corner and the hooker will put boot to ball.
I just kind of immersed myself too much in rugby, controlling how I felt. We were winning, I was happy. We lost, and I had to go on a big bender to Croatia to get over it. I think I'd kind of lost the love for rugby a bit. You're listening to the England Rugby Podcast O2 Inside Line. I'm Amy Cokayne. I'm Amy Cokayne. I play for Leicester Tigers and England. The position I play is hooker, and for those of you that don't know, I'm in the middle of the scrum and I throw the ball in the line out. What makes a good hooker is being able to nail your set piece, so being good at scrum and line out, but also being agile around the pitch, so almost like a fourth back rower. I kind of describe myself as a 10 trapped in a hooker's body, so I like a cheeky kick every now and again, which probably doesn't really add to the position too much. Yeah, I'm a bit more flary than a normal hooker, I'd say. Growing up, I think my parents would have described me as very competitive and also very stubborn. I don't think I've changed too much from that. For example, I used to hate getting my hair cut, so my dad had to actually pay me to have my hair cut, and he had to pay for the haircut as well. It was the only way he could get me to have my hair cut. So, yeah, stubborn. I don't really know why. I think I maybe just saw it as a money-making opportunity. I knew my dad wanted me to have it done, so I was like, make a few quid out of that. So growing up, being a bit of a military brat, moved around quite a bit, ended up spending most of my childhood actually out in New Zealand. So before I was moved to New Zealand, I was obviously born in Ipswich, moved to Western-super-Mare, lived in Northern Ireland, and then eventually Lichfield. Moved over to New Zealand when I was 9, and that's kind of like the longest I spent anywhere as a child. So that's kind of where I felt most settled. But yeah, in a rural part of New Zealand, in a little place called Manawatu. Growing up in New Zealand was obviously a lot different to growing up over here. For example, in my primary school, it was like no shoes inside, so barefoot all the time, which obviously just meant you were barefoot all the time, in and out. Very relaxed. My high school was an agricultural school, so you got to work on the school farm and stuff like that. Maybe a bit more at one with nature during my schooling, and obviously rugby was massive. The only part of my family that actually moved out to New Zealand was just my core family, so it was just me, my mum, dad and my brother. Because I was so young, moving all the time, I think it all just kind of merges into one. Like my mum will be like, oh, do you remember when we lived here? And I'm like, I don't really know. I don't have the differences in all the different locations. You know, I think it's just something we were used to and we just got on with it. And I think me and my brother got good at occupying ourselves, and you get used to, especially in the military, all kids are in the same situation really. So everyone just learns to get on with whoever's there at the time. Rugby was huge right from a young age. So my first club was at Cleve near Bristol, only because my brother played and my mum used to have to take him to rugby training, and I was just kind of there being annoying. And eventually his coach, because he's 3 years older than me, went, why don't you go to your actual age group and give it a go? So yeah, that was about 5 or 6. I don't know why my brother started playing. He liked football and rugby. I guess it's kind of that age-old debate. But my dad's very much, he likes rugby and football as well. So, but yeah, we've quite a mad rugby family now anyway. And then obviously when we moved to New Zealand, it was a good way to meet people from the area, make friends, and rugby clubs are kind of the heart of the community over there as well. So it made life a lot easier. When I was a kid, it was all sports. It was whatever could get me a day off school, to be honest with you. And my parents definitely supported most sports. I did play softball, though, which my dad refused to watch because he said it was just long and boring. Over in England, I played a bit of football and a bit of rugby. So it was normally one on the Saturday, one on the Sunday. So I'm sure my parents loved having their weekends taking me and my brother to different sports. We are really close as a family. I think especially me and my brother growing up, we moved every, say, 18 months, so they're like your constant almost. So we were quite close growing up, and then we hit the teenage years and we decided to hate each other, I think. But again, we've moved on from that and we're very close again now. We try and spend as much time with each other as we can. My brother's got a little boy now as well, so it's added a new dynamic to the family. I think he was probably quite annoyed with me when we were kids because every time he tried something new, whether it was like, I want to play cricket, I'd be like, okay, well, I want to play cricket then. kind of a bit of a mini me. So yeah, he was obviously a big part of why I started rugby as well. Like the classic story of he wasn't very good at tackling, so my dad used to use me as like a human tackle shield. Essentially, it would just be like, Amy, stand there and then run there. So like A to B, you run there, and then I'll just get tackled. Yeah, that's essentially it. So moving tackle shield. And he's been so supportive. So yeah, he's been a big part, and I think he enjoys getting the stash at the end of the year when we get new kit as well.
I am Thomas Cokayne. I am serving in the British Army, and I am Amy Cokayne's brother. Amy was always very good at everything she did, from rugby, javelin, to throwing a welly over a long distance. She won a national competition doing that. Like, everything she did, she was just amazing at. And it always felt like I was trying to be somewhere near her level. If Amy makes a mistake or there's a stressful situation, it's just never fazed her. She can just move on. Nothing seems too much for her. Yeah, moving back from New Zealand, everyone makes it out like this is Amy's great big moment. What never comes out in the story is I wanted to leave years before to join the British Army and wasn't allowed to. And then I get a call saying Amy's going back to England. We'll drop her off and we'll all come back. And I was like, what's happened here? Like, yeah, apparently the RFU have met Amy and she's going to be this rugby superstar. But don't worry, we're going to come back and you have to finish uni. And I was like, no, surely I get to go do my dream as well of joining the army. But in all seriousness, it was the correct decision. Like, what she has achieved since leaving New Zealand is phenomenal. Her success, I think, comes down to just that relaxed attitude. It's just a game of rugby to her. Like the last Six Nations where she's doing the Hulk Hogan to the French fans. Like, who does that? Like, she just doesn't. She's that relaxed. Every time she plays for England, I don't think you can really describe what it feels to see a sibling out there. Yeah, it's such a surreal feeling, especially because you know the backstory, you know what she's done, you know how much work she puts in. Our story, like, she literally left all her friends the other side of the world and took a risk to come back to England when most people wouldn't have. Realistically, you don't leave your friends, don't leave your family. She was on course to play for New Zealand. Why would you leave that? But she did, just to start this whole thing. So you don't get 50 caps if you don't take that risk. I think that's probably the proudest thing.
My family are massive Villa fans. Well, my dad is anyway. My mum's a West Ham fan, but we never normally talk about that. Yeah, we lived in Lichfield, which is obviously in Aston Villa's area. So my dad took me down to trials. So I played for Aston Villa under 10s as a goalkeeper. But it's probably safe to say that I chose the right path and stuck with rugby, as I'm now short. I'm not sure I'd be a very effective goalkeeper now. So yeah, probably wise that I chose rugby. My dad's a massive Villa fan. He always talks about the glory days of when, champions of Europe and him just following them around everywhere. He decided when I was born that he wanted my initials to be AVFC for Aston Villa Football Club. It actually took a while to decide on the name for the F initial. So at one point I was going to be Amy Victoria F. Cokayne, which I'm just not sure would have been good. But they landed on Amy Victoria Feaunati Cokayne. But my mum always jokes that she was racing him to the registry or wherever you go to put the names in to try and cancel that out. But he won that battle in the end. Crazy, I think. Everyone's always surprised when they hear it. But yeah, it's true. My parents are kind of like number one fans. My 50th cap, they'd been to like 49 out of the 50 games, so that's obviously like travelled all over the world to watch it. They plan their holidays based on where we're going. Even if I'm not selected to go to Canada, they've already booked their flights to Canada, so they'll be going no matter what. Even Six Nations, I was injured, but they still went to like all the away games. They liked it now that I've moved back to Leicester. It's a lot closer for them. So I was previously at Harlequin, so they were travelling all the way down to Quins or wherever we were playing each week. So yeah, they were definitely happy when I made the choice to move back up to the Midlands. So now I don't live far from them, so they see a lot more of me. It makes such a huge difference being able to see them at all the games. It's always quite nice to try and find them when you're singing the anthem and stuff. This kind of gives you that grounding, and I think they've played such a huge role in getting me where I am. So to have to see them at my games, they love it as well. And it's always nice to have someone to go and speak to after a game. It gets a bit carnage now because we've got a lot bigger crowds and stuff, so they're normally fighting their way through people who are trying to get photos. You definitely notice a difference when they're not there. You're like, oh, where do I go now? I know I'm super lucky to be able to have them at most games.
I'm Ian Cokayne and I'm Amy's dad.
And I'm Sharon Cokayne and I'm Amy's mum. She's got a heart of gold, and she comes across as being quite gruff sometimes, or very as if she doesn't care, but she does, and she will go out of her way to help people or do things. And I think some people don't often see that side. They just see almost like she always looks very serious, where she's not. She's quite a comical person, really. She never gives up. You know, she could be really badly injured and she's still got that fighting spirit. She's such a strong-willed person, and her determination to do well, you just got to admire her. Very proud of the fact that, you know, she puts on that shirt, and especially now where she stands to attention. We have so many people comment, you know, say how proud they are of her, especially military friends. We go to every single game that we possibly can. I think we've only missed 3 England games out of the 75 that she's took part in. We've travelled the world, so she's given us that. We've gone to places we never thought we'd ever go to, watching her play, and it's just such a pleasure.
How Amy's rugby career fits into our life is, it's just a massive part of it. Most weekends we'll go and watch her at a club, or, you know, if it's international season, we'll make sure we're there. Very proud of Amy for lots of different reasons, but I think, you know, even going back to her being 17 and deciding to play for England, she knew that would mean a lot of pressure on her shoulders. We'd have to sell up, move back, and then if she didn't make it, but she was still determined to do that, and she believed in herself enough to take that leap of faith. She is amazing at what she does. The core roles of a hooker, I don't think there's anyone better than her.
Tense situation, Scotland a bit. Oh, Cokayne, that was too easy. She scores.
One of our traditions that started years ago now, when I first got into the England setup, we used to have fitness testing on about the 3rd of January every year, and it was Christmas Day, and me and my dad were just sat on the sofa, and I was talking about, I need to make sure that my bench is better for testing in a few days. And then he went, I bet I can beat you in a bench press. Bear in mind, he's like, no spring chicken anymore. And I went, all right then. So we literally got off the sofa, went down to the rugby club and had a bench press competition. And it kind of just evolved from there. So my brother was actually away with work at the time that year, but then the next year he got involved and we started getting a bit more, put a few more rules and stuff on it now. So it's just bench press, whatever your 1 rep max can be. But as soon as you've done it, you have to get straight down now and do your max press ups. And then it's your score. So the total weight you had, and then your press ups gives you your total score. We had to kind of add the press ups in because my brother was a lot stronger than both me and my dad. We thought that would be a way to try and stop him from winning every year. And my dad actually did beat him 2 years ago, and he was raging about that. So then he won again this year. No, it's good. It's kind of something we do every Christmas now. My mum even gets involved now. We say you have to get at least 100 and you're allowed to eat your Christmas dinner. But my mum gets 50 points for cooking the Christmas dinner, so she only has to get 50. So she's been nailing it. Moving to New Zealand it came really quickly out the blue, I think, from my dad coming home and asked my mum, would you want to move to New Zealand? Within 6 months, we were in New Zealand. The place we were at before we moved to New Zealand, we'd been there for 3 years, but we'd been told, this is going to be it, we're not moving from here, no matter what happens, this is going to be a house, and then obviously we moved to the other side of the world. Yeah, it definitely was a good settling period for us, and then we lived in the same area for 8 years, which was crazy for us. We'd never lived in the same place for more than 3 years, so yeah, it was definitely a good settler. Living in one place, you could then say you were from that place, or this is where I'm from, or this is where home is. I think even now, when I talk about being from England, I was born in Ipswich, but I couldn't tell you, I've never been to Ipswich since I was 18 months old. So I always find it a really weird question to be able to, when they go, where are you from? Well, I'm not from Ipswich, but that's where I was born. I spent the most time in, say, Lichfield, but lived in Western-super-Mare, lived in Northern Ireland, and all over the places. So I think for that 8-year period, you could say, I live here, this is where home is. So we moved back in December 2013, so we've been back, it's 11 years now? So now it's England's now where we've spent the most time. It was good, obviously a lot of change. I left as a 9-year-old and came back as a 17-year-old. I guess the difference, especially for me, from playing in New Zealand to playing over here, the big one that I always talk about is I played women's rugby from the age of 13, so I played for my local club, Feaunati Old Boys Orua. That would never happen over here. Like, you would not get a 13-year-old playing women's rugby. I think they might have changed it a bit now in New Zealand, but when I went on to play like regional rugby for Manawatu, I had to have like a doctor sign me off because I was front row and under the age of 16 playing against full-on Black Ferns. Like, I remember one of the most horrific stories was, so I'm tiny, little 15-year-old, and we went down to Canterbury, and Casey Robertson, big number 8, played for the Black Ferns, and I was just over the ball, like sealing off, and she just came in and cleared me out, and it was kind of like, yeah, I need to get a bit bigger if I want to be competing at this level. It was a bit of a shock when I then moved back here. So I was at Hartbury, but wasn't with any club or anything like that at the time. And a few of the girls had a game at the weekend. They're like, oh, come play for our team. So it's like Reading versus Worcester or some under-18s. We played on like the back pitches out at Worcester, which was a bog. So we're all muddy, and it wasn't a great standard. And I just thought, man, I've moved back for this. Like, have I made the right decision? Luckily, the RFU gave me a dispensation to play in the Prem when I was 17, which you obviously can do now, but at the time you couldn't do. So that was a bit better, yeah, but I was a bit like, oh, this is a bit of a shock to the system playing this rugby. So the decision to move back was a bit of a strange one. So I was in year 13 at school, kind of, planning where I'm going to go to uni, what I'm going to do. And then I got invited to Black Ferns trial camp, which was crazy. I wasn't expecting that at all. I don't think I was really ready for that either, to be honest with you. Like, I was definitely not going to get picked, but maybe they just needed some numbers or something. Yeah, so went up and did that. And then my high school coach at the time, Rob Jones, he's Welsh. He was like, if you go down this path and you pursue that, like, it's going to shut off anything you ever wanted with England. And I was like, what do you mean what I wanted for England? Like, I'm not thinking about international rugby. I'm literally 17 years old. And he was like, well, if you did have the choice and you had to choose between New Zealand and England, like, what would your choice be? And I was like, well, obviously England. And I remember when I left Lichfield when I was 9, they made me stand on this little chair and pledge like allegiance to England and say, make sure that if you're going to play international rugby, you're going to come back and play for England. So that was kind of like niggling in the back of my mind as well. Yes, I was like, obviously England, but can't see how that's even something we need to worry about now, or how that would even work, like obviously living in New Zealand. And he kind of just went, all right, yeah, leave it with me. Next thing I know, we're going on like a school rugby tour to Auckland, because it just happened to be where England were touring in 2013 to play like a free match test series against the Black Ferns. One day on the door he goes, oh, come on, we're going to go for a coffee. So we're in Auckland, we're going for a coffee, and then I walk in and it was like Gary Street, Graham Smith, Nikki Ponsford and Latoya Mason. So the coaches, and Latoya was obviously a player at the time. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? And they were kind of like, so Jones, my coach, kind of sent them, I think, like a highlights reel, and I hope no one has access to that because I dread to think what it would look like. He kind of said, we've got this young hooker, would love to play for England, lives over here, blah, blah, blah. Latoya was a big factor in me actually making the move to come back as well. She was obviously like New Zealand, but had English heritage, played for England. And she kind of said to me, like, if you actually want to play international rugby, England is by far the clear and obvious choice, because she got capped at the same time as one of her Black Ferns friends, and Latoya had like 50 caps and her New Zealand friend had like 12. So she was like, if you actually want to play, not that I needed convincing, but that was definitely like, yeah, well, obviously that's what I'd want to do. So that was in like June time. And then, yeah, in December, the whole family had moved back, which was quite wild, because initially it was just going to be me that moved back. I was going to just live with my nan and then just play rugby and just see what happens, really. My brother was at university at the time, and he'd always wanted to come back and join the British Army. And he was kind of like, well, she gets to go back, I'm going back. And then my parents were like, oh, well, if both our kids are going back, like, why would we want to be out here and probably miss out on all the cool things that they're going to end up doing? Yeah, they ended up selling the house, which was like their dream house. They'd bought the land, built it from scratch. I convinced them to bring the dog back as well. So Goldie got to come back. I don't think at the time I really understood the gravity of that. But obviously looking back now, like, that was pretty big moves. They had kind of set up their dream life of living in New Zealand, kind of sacrificed that to bring us back. But I'm sure they say they don't regret it. They love being over here now. And it also meant that we got to be a lot closer with our family, so like grandparents and stuff, which we didn't really get to see much of when we were obviously out there. I think it's all worked out well in the end anyway.
And here they come. Cokayne has it again. Can she go over for a double? Still, Cokayne needs the touchdown. It's a double for the birthday girl. Harlequins Amy Cokayne goes over, and that is 4 tries.
I'm Emily Scarratt. I play for the Red Roses and Loughborough Lightning. Amy Cokayne is like just a fiery thing. Like, she's both on the rugby field and off the rugby field. But as soon as you get to know her, she's also incredibly caring, like really, really good value. She's the sort of person that will bring energy when everyone is dying on a Friday and it's like the graveyard session. She's the one that brings the music, brings the energy, gets people going. If I called her and needed something, she would be there in a flash.
I'm Maddie Feaunati and I play for Exeter Chiefs and England Roses. Amy Cokayne on the pitch is just someone you don't want running at you. She's just so powerful, so detailed again with her line out throwing, her carries, breaking the line, and also her tackles, both sides of the ball in collision. And then off the pitch, she's just like someone that always lights up a room. She's so happy all the time, and she's probably just like everyone's hype girl.
Cokayne scores tries. That is just what she
does. I think it's hugely important for people to have something outside of rugby, and I think people always go, oh, does that mean I have to go to uni or get qualified in something? I don't think it has to necessarily be that big. I think you just have to be passionate about something else, and I think that's huge because where people are getting contracts now or growing up going, I want to be a rugby player, we have like 18-year-olds coming through now and all their focus on is rugby. But contracts, you know, you're not getting like a 20-year contract. It's not like as long as you play rugby, we'll contract you. You know, we're getting like 1-2 year deals. So if you don't have something outside of it, it can almost be like falling off a cliff, I think, if you don't get recontracted. I know we've had players in the past that has happened to them. You know, they thought, oh, I'm fine, I'm contracted, and then boom, not. So it's hard because people are like, oh, well, you need to commit everything to try and make it or to be in this environment. But just find anything that you're passionate about, just have something outside of it, and it can help. You know, if you get injured, it gives you something else to focus on as well. Because if you just get wrapped up too much in rugby, like it can just control your entire life, which I don't necessarily think, like from my point of view, wasn't healthy at the time. In Ireland in 2017, we lost in the final. And I think I had just kind of immersed myself too much in rugby controlling how I felt almost. So like we were winning, I was happy, we lost, and I had to go on a big bender to Croatia to get over it. I've now learned rugby's, not that it's not the be all and end all, because I'm totally immersed in this group and what we want to achieve as well, but I just needed something else that if for whatever reason I couldn't have rugby tomorrow, I knew I was going to be okay and I had a different direction that I could go into. I was at university but hated it. It just kind of fit right for me to join the Air Force full time. It meant taking a year out of rugby for the training and stuff, but I think I'd kind of lost the love for rugby a bit. I'd lost my rugby club as well, like I played for Lichfield. They then didn't make it into the Prem when the Prem got restructured. So when I joined and then it was time to, I can get back into rugby, I like had that fire again. I actually wanted to pursue the sport. I joined the Air Force, moved clubs, joined Harlequins, and it was definitely what I needed at the time. I obviously took the break to join the Air Force, so I joined as an officer, which means you have to go to RAF Cranwell for 6 months. And then because I was joining as a police officer, I then had a further 6 months training down in Portsmouth, which was actually quite nice because it was summer by the beach. And I loved that. I loved the training, and it was almost a bit of a shame that I wasn't going to go straight into a police job. Like when I did all the training, I was like, I do think I genuinely would really enjoy having this career. So it is something that I'm looking forward to when I eventually go back into the Air Force and have a primary role. I am still full-time RAF, but I'm lucky enough to be on this scheme called the Elite Athlete Scheme. So in the Air Force, I think there's about 12 of us that are on it, all from different sports. There's 4 of us actually in women's rugby, which is kind of crazy. That essentially just relieves you of your primary role. So there's no like day-to-day anything that I need to do. I'm not responsible for anything. It's more just having engagements. For example, we had to go back to RAF Cranwell, which is a bit like PTSD when you go back there. But so me and Sarah Bonner, the Scotland rugby player who's also on it, we went there and we just speak to the new recruits and tell them about sport in the Air Force and try and recruit them for rugby and stuff. So that's kind of more our role, is it's spreading the word on the Air Force and what the life of the Air Force can be, really. Each year for the Air Force we have inter-services, so we play against the Army and the Navy. The Army have won it every time, apart from one time, when we finally beat them in 2019, which was a great day. I actually was playing 10 that day, so that's why I say when I'm a 10 trapped in a hooker's body, it was quite successful, you know, playing 10. I think especially because the Army have just been so dominant as well. There's been a bit of more of a battle between the Air Force and the Navy, for the women's side anyway, over the years. But yeah, my brother being in the Army always creates a bit of drama around that time of the year as well. He's not shy in letting us know who he's actually supporting on the day. My partner now, Bethan Dainton, she actually played in that Army game. I didn't know her at the time, but she played for the Army in that game when we beat them. So I then met her that year after that. It's funny, each year when we play against each other in the inter-services, she didn't play this year, but she played the year before. And everyone's like, oh, what's it going to be like playing against each other? But it's totally fine. I think some people struggle when they play against their partner, but yeah, we had no issues. It wasn't like we didn't speak each other for a week or anything like that. We were just still pretty normal. But if you think about it too much, it would be too weird, I think. I'm obviously not going to go excessive and I'm going to hurt you. That would be weird. But yeah, I think you just treat them like anyone else on the pitch. They're the opposition at the time. And then at the end of the game, you just go back to you being normal, have a drink with everyone after the game. Life's good. Yeah, it is kind of still bragging rights, which she now sadly has because the Army beat us again this year.
My name is Bethan Dainton and I'm Amy's partner. We first met actually in the physio room, so I knew of her before. I'd obviously played service rugby against her, but didn't really know her. And then I was just on the physio bed at Harlequins because I'd had a really bad reaction to some KT, and she walked past and she was like, "Ew, what's that on your leg?" So that was the first ever time I'd actually spoken to her, and I was like, oh God, who's that idiot? First game I played against Amy, she actually was playing 10. And she played so well. I think she was probably a key part that they actually beat us in 2019. And it kills me to say it because I've never lived it down since, but she absolutely ran us ragged around the pitch. I think what makes her a good rugby player is she's quite calm, chilled, laid back, nothing really phases her, so she sort of takes each thing as it comes, doesn't really put a lot of pressure on herself, and I think she's just quite naturally gifted as well. She does work really hard as well, but she is naturally gifted. I think some of Amy's best qualities are she's really kind, caring, she's got a good heart. She'd absolutely hate me for putting this out on the podcast, because I think she likes to come across hard and nothing phases it, but yeah, she's a really nice, kind person.
I knew of Bethan, but not personally, just you just randomly know people within the rugby world, don't you? And then when I moved to Harlequins, she was at Harlequins, and that was in 2019, and then not long after we actually got together, COVID then hit, so then we were thrown into this COVID relationship where she was living at my house in Aldershot. But it was great. We always talk about it now, we're like, oh, we could do another lockdown, because it was just the weather was good, we had a good gym, you could just get up and do whatever you wanted with your day, couldn't you? Yeah, I think COVID almost made it was you either made your relationship stronger or made it realise you didn't like that person as much as you thought you did. So yeah, we came through as a COVID relationship a lot stronger than we thought maybe. Yeah, so it's been about 5 years now we've been together. So yeah, she's been at Leeds now for 2 seasons, done really well. She's now captain of the Wales League team as well. So she's dual cap, so she's a bit of an overachiever. But yeah, so her moving up there was a big reason why I then had to, or wanted to, leave Quins and move somewhere nearer so we could still live together and stuff. I think we've never really done anything crazy to be whoa, we're together. I think for us we were always conscious, as long as the people we care about know, we don't really care about what other people think anyway. So our families get on well. I think my mum likes Bethan more than she likes me. It's always a bit of a duel when we go to my parents' house. She always says that I'm like my dad, and I always say she's like my mum. They always back each other up when we're arguing about something. Coming up next on the England Rugby Podcast, O2 Inside Line.
I always felt quite on the back foot and quite uncomfortable that I didn't really know my culture, or I couldn't contribute much to my culture because we didn't grow up around it. So I felt like I was doing a lot of catch up, which was sort of an uncomfortable phase.